On the flaring, issue, and Senator Hoeven, of course, lives with this day in and day out in North Dakota. I think the question really is, how might our committee look in a practical way at an approach that would help us achieve a goal of minimal flaring across the country? I know that we look at the regulatory and incentive, structure kind of first. I mean, maybe there are going to be people who are going to say the amount of flared gas is going to drop on its own, which we're happy to hear people opinion of that. And if so, the question is, how quickly. But I'm very interested in seeing if our committee can come together to be part of an effort to get a reasonable timeline to achieve a minimal goal of flaring across the country. So if you industry folks would like to start it, I want to hear from the environmentalists. Senator Hoeven has a lot of expertise on this because he lives it, day in and day out. Let's see if we can wrap up with a discussion of that.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to weigh in it, and I am going to tell you that it is going to fix itself over time.
It's going to fix over time?
Yes.
Your view?
Yes. This is really the issue is predominantly in the Bakken, a bit in the Permian, and it is associated gas with oil production that has ramped up very quickly, and infrastructure is catching up. In the Bakken, we do capture and process and sell over 70% of the gas, but there is a good bit that's flared. Industry is in the middle of investing over $4 billion in the midstream to process that gas. We have every incentive to do so. As a matter of fact, there was just an announcement last week on One Oak bringing 200 million a day more processing capacity online. It's going to happen over the next several years, and the industry is going to catch up to the oil production.
We can save some time and go to Senator Hoeven. Do you all think it's just going to happen of its own, the other three industry folks? Yeah.
I would just add that one of the things that has happened with the shale revolution is these resources were found in areas that we didn't realize were commercially developed. So we've got many parts of the country that previously were not producing areas that are suddenly have an abundance of resources. And so I agree, we're working to bring that infrastructure in there to capture the gas. We have every incentive to do so. This is a valuable product. And so we want to make sure that we can commercialize it and market it. But the pipeline industry and the midstream industry is working very hard, making massive investments to help us capture it. And I think we are continuing to make steps to reduce the amount of flaring.
If you other two gentlemen from industry don't differ from these two, we can hear from the environmentalists and Senator Hoeven. Do you two differ from the other gentleman?
Actually, no. I just wanted to add, though, that in support of what Mr. Williams and Mr. Davidson said, in the Marcellus, for our activities, which are not, it's not associated gas, it's entirely, or most of our acreage is dry gas. We've already gone from situations where a few years ago we would have had some amount of flaring at every well to now having the vast majority of our wells involve zero venting, zero flaring. So it is an associated gas issue. That is when gas is associated with the production of oil or liquids.
Mr. Precious, anything else?
Nothing more than the fact that it happens in very few instances, very few places within the whole shale plays. And I would agree with Mr. Porges in that it generally happens where we have associated gas, but again, a very limited geographical extent. Most places, the economic incentive is too great.
Any environmental leaders? And then we'll hear from Senator Hoeven.
Sure. 4 points. Number one, flaring is better than venting. Number two, we believe that we should be extending the green completion requirement that currently applies to natural gas producers and will be fully effective by 2015, that requirement should apply to associated gas production as well. It currently doesn't, and there's no reason why it shouldn't. Number three, we should ensure that flares, where they are in place, achieve a combustion efficiency, or designed to and achieve a combustion efficiency of 98% or greater. And then four, that we have automatic reigniters. Sometimes for operational reasons, the flares will go out, and particularly in remote locations, if there's no one around, you can wind up having venting for a number of hours or days before the flares are reignited. And so we want to have automatic reigniters to make sure that we are avoiding unnecessary methane emissions.
Ms. Mull, Ms. Nardone, anything else?
Well, I would just agree with everything Mark said. We think that the infrastructure needs to be in place to ensure that flaring is minimized and used for exploratory production and emergency situations, that the best available technology should be required, and also that it should be regularly monitored to ensure that flares are actually achieving the goals that were set out for them, whether it's the automatic reignition or the efficiency of the combustion.
Ms. Nardone, anything else?
And I would just add that co-producing wells should be required under the new source performance standards to require green completions. I mean, honestly, capturing methane is the low-hanging fruit. It's cost-effective for the industry to do it, and it will have a significant impact on climate change. There's no reason they should be venting or flaring. It should be captured.
Senator Hoven.
Interested to hear all of your comments. It is an associated gas problem. For example, in North Dakota, we don't drill for gas, we drill for oil. But those wells also produce rich gas as a byproduct, which is a benefit to the country because it's very low cost. And you have not only the natural gas, but you have the ethane, butane, and the other gas products, liquid products. So it's absolutely an associated problem. Two, we will catch up with it, or you all will catch up with it, I believe, because of the value, which now is going into fertilizer plant. I think there's 2 multi-billion-dollar fertilizer plants being built right now in the state. We're looking at converting railroads from diesel to natural gas, which would have benefits in terms of CO2 reduction. Ethane's going to manufacturing plants. And we also have to start using it, or should start using it in vehicles. To do that, we need to move legislation like the Domestic Fuels Act that I proposed that would allow fuel stations to sell different types of fuel. So they could sell gasoline, they could sell biofuels, or they could sell natural gas to power vehicles. But right now, it's so difficult for them to meet all the different legal and regulatory requirements to do that, that if we could work with all of you to facilitate that, I think you could see vehicle usage, again a winner, less flaring, and vehicles with lower emissions. Potentially even becoming a source for hydrogen. And then your emission is water. All of these things, though, go to infrastructure. The most basic, of course, is just pipelines, gathering systems. And then you work your way up to these other higher level products. We've got to find a way to build the infrastructure. That means permitting. That means environmental issues. You see what I'm saying? Back to the point I made before, industry can only do those things as fast as they're able to get permitted so that they can go forward and make that. I mean, they've got huge amounts of capital they want to deploy. But again, unless we streamline some of the regulatory and legal requirements, and again, I'd go back to a state's first approach, but they need to develop this infrastructure to accomplish what you all, I think, want to accomplish.
And Senator, if I may, while we're talking about that new infrastructure, what I would urge us also to talk about is the integrity of the existing infrastructure.
Yeah, well, you made some good points, which I actually jotted down, some of the safety features, and I'm going to check and see, where we're at with some of those. But where I see some real opportunity between industry and between some of the environmental groups is we've got to develop the infrastructure. And to the extent, this is an area where I think you have a real interest in working with industry to expedite that process, because the infrastructure is going to enable them to capture that gas and put it to productive uses and reduce emissions and reduce flaring. So that's the kind of thing we're very interested in, finding some bridges and hopefully moving some legislation that will help them do that.
Any other questions Senator from North Dakota has on flaring?
Just asking for help to do just that, develop this infrastructure so they can capture the gas.